It's time to make our thumbs a little greener. On today's episode of Wisconsin Wonder Garden, I wanted to tell you guys about this awesome deal that they're having at Stein's on this Sempervivum planter right here. I do have many Sempervivum, but I could just not pass up this deal, and I'll show you in depth with why this is such a great deal for a planter like this. And then later on in the episode, we're also going to replant all of these Sempervivum here into a brand new planter that we're actually going to be growing indoors, not outdoors. I'm going to be having this thing grow indoors throughout the entire winter, and most likely we're going to keep this thing indoors for many years to come and then just propagate out the different chicks as they grow from the original hens. So stay tuned, this is going to be a fun episode. So first I want to talk about these Sempervivum here. There's a wide variety in here, including what looks to be like a chocolate type Sempervivum, which turns this beautiful dark red color. It is an outstanding Sempervivum to add different colors and shades to your Sempervivum bed wherever you might have that. Really beautiful. Then looking through the rest of the planter, we see that there is what looks to be one more variety, which is all of these green ones outside here. These are two examples of some more mature ones. I've had these in the past. I don't know what their exact name is, but they do get pretty large and put off some really beautiful bright pink flowers. I have a video on YouTube here in the past where I did of one flowering, and they're just outstanding, really beautiful Sempervivum as well. I've got this whole planter here at Stein's for that 40% off deal, all said and done for $8.99 for all of these Sempervivum. I brought up the fact that many times these deals that you can find later in the season at different gardening centers are just too good to pass up, and this was one of those cases. I will count all of these up and see just how many we did get for that $8.99 price. But before we do that, I want to show you this other Sempervivum that we got from a local grower here. He says that these are kind of like a cultivar off of the Golden Nugget one from Mountain Crest. If you guys have seen the Golden Nugget Sempervivum, they're just gorgeous. If not, I would recommend Googling it right now to see that these things put off some outstanding color, this really deep golden nugget type of color, really deep oranges, and it really breaks into the reds as well. A beautiful hue. So I'm just hoping that the so-called cultivar of this turns out to be just about of the same quality. Again, this was just from a local grower here. I saw some of the mother plants that this originally came off of, and they were totally stunning. So guys, stay tuned for this transformation of this plant here as the colors start to come out. Hopefully when we have it under the grow lights here inside, we're going to start to see those colors pretty quickly. Being the fact that it's going towards the fall months, this thing should start changing colors. But with us bringing it inside and kind of changing the environment around it, I'm really not sure how it's going to react, so it's going to be a cool experiment here inside. So as I mentioned before, we're actually going to be taking all of these hens and chicks and propagating them out, seeing just how many we have in there in total, to show you the value that you get from Sempervivum planters like this, and then planting all of these into a permanent indoor planter. I'll show you how we're going to build that indoor planter right now. Okay everybody, what we have here is just a seedling starting tray that we've got from previous purchases. When we've bought a whole tray of succulents, they came in this. Each one had, you know, their own little planter set inside here. And then this, which allows for draining. So we're going to use it for just that purpose. So this grate is raised off of this bottom tray here by quite a bit, maybe half an inch around the edges, and then less once we get weight in there in the center. It's going to press all the way down. But what we're going to do is fill the bottom of this up with these rocks here. And then we're going to put in this orchid potting mix. As funny as that sounds, this is a really coarse blend that really is the texture of kind of like if you took up a bunch of tree bark, broke it apart into pieces, and added in like mulch and other thicker, coarse organic material. That's really what this orchid potting mix is. And then we're going to mix in what is peat moss and perlite mixed together. That's generally what I propagate my succulents in. So we're going to do all three of those things, put the rocks in the bottom, and then mix in the orchid potting mix along with the peat moss and perlite mixture here. That peat moss and perlite, it's really mostly peat moss, like 80% peat moss with just a little bit of perlite. So that is going to be our soil mixture. I know you guys are really curious on what is going to help your Sempervivum grow the best, both indoors and outdoors. In this case, growing indoors, this mixture is going to be so good for these things. They're going to love it. If you're growing outdoors, really whatever sort of soil you have, I would just recommend amending in some coarse sand or rocks along with that. Just have a well-draining mixture, whether you have it in the ground or in a pot as well. First things first. Oh, get rid of some of that. And then we're just going to spread them along the bottom. Now we're going to take this orchid potting mix. See, as you guys can see, it's really kind of like a pretty coarse mulch. A lot of organic material that's going to be well draining. That's what this stuff is. The Sempervivum are going to love this. Spread it across the whole surface here. And then I'm going to mix in our peat moss and perlite mixture. Oh, look it. Just happen to have a little baby succulent in there. Now that we've completed that step, next we're going to take all of our Sempervivum and separate them out. I'll show you guys propagating these things are super easy. To propagate this, you're really just going to grab the chicks, give them a nice tug. You'll be left with this rosette and then the root system down below it. I'm just going to pinch that off there. So all we have left is about 3/4 of an inch of that root system left. And that's exactly how we're going to plant it. This is that one we just took. I'm just going to place it right on top of the soil like that. In the example of some of these larger ones, when we pull these out, you'll see there's a lot more root system there. In this case, I won't rip off quite as much. I want to leave at least an inch, maybe just take off a tiny little bit of this on the end. Just like that. So we've got maybe 1.5 inches there left of that original root system. That is not going to harm your Sempervivum to rip on it like that. These things are bulletproof and they're not going to see any issues whatsoever with being handled like this. You'll be really surprised as you take care of your Sempervivum how resilient they really are to stuff like this, and through propagating they really don't mind whatsoever. So then with these larger ones, I'm going to have to dig a little bit of a hole in there, seed it in, and just like that, there's another one propagated. So that is 2 of them so far. Let's repeat this process and see just how many Sempervivum we've got for $8.99. In cases like this one, where we see a lot of dead leaves underneath that Sempervivum, you can just take those, run around the whole plant, rip them all off and then discard them and plant your original Sempervivum. Okay, so we've got everything planted here, and minus the separate container that we got from that gold nugget cultivar, I'm counting about 59, so let's say 60 Sempervivum here in this one planter that we've got for $8.99. So a lot of the times you guys love propagating plants. You love to see your plants multiply. And in this case, this is an exponential growth rate right here, especially with Sempervivum, because the rate that they produce those chicks is really incredible. If you've never experienced it before, I really recommend getting Sempervivum. They're just so much fun to propagate and grow and just watch them multiply before your eyes. They're also beautiful. They come in all sorts of ranges of sizes, colors. There's some that looks like they've got spider webs growing over them. Different types of patterns in the leaves, all kinds of stuff when it comes to Sempervivum. If you've never grown them before, I really recommend it. So stay tuned, everybody, as I will be documenting these things' growth. They are going to explode before your eyes. I hope you guys really enjoy this. So I'm sure some of you might be wondering now, what am I going to do for watering? Essentially, I'm going to stick with a once every 2 weeks water at first. When these are propagating, they need to be a little bit more moist in order to establish. I've found that doing that helps them really root in a little bit better compared to a longer time in between waterings. So a little bit more frequent at first, and then I'll probably drop down to maybe once every 3 weeks. Just really a typical watering. Stay tuned for a future video as I'll show you guys how I do the watering, and then again how they're growing, how they're rooting, and just keeping you updated with this beautiful Sempervivum planter here that we're growing indoors. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in once again. I hope you're all having a great gardening adventure. We'll see you in the next video.